Hey guys, welcome to another Trade Genius podcast. Bob and Phil here. They're going after the dollar. We're going to get into exactly what I'm talking about here in this video. You're not going to want to miss it, so let's dive in.
Trade Genius.
Hey guys, I want to tell you something that we do that really will change the way in which you look at trading and also absolutely help you increase your profitability and how much money you make. It's the Trade Genius newsletter. We put the newsletter out Sunday night through Thursday night, and this really looks at the plumbing of the markets and helps prepare you for the next trading day and help you make money. And we give you a lot of information. We give you market statistics, we give you market levels, we give you the seasonality, what's happening with different sectors of the market, and we will help you identify whether the market's in a bear mode or a bull mode, or whether it's euphoric, whether it's despondent, and it just puts you in a position to be on the right side of the trade. So take advantage of our offer that we have below, and you'll love it. I mean, one trade that you make with this thing can pay for definitely a month, maybe even a year's worth of service. It's that powerful. Use promo code podcast for 15% off the retail price of newsletter. Thanks for listening.
Okay, Bob. So a lot of stuff's been rumbling around on the interwebs. We've got some data here on what China's doing, basically going up against the dollar, try to undermine it basically. But, you're very good at the geopolitical stuff. So can you kind of clue us in on what's going on and, what that means for us here at home and the dollar?
I'll answer it by telling a story. So, there's two guys with a home, and the one home has this beautiful tree blocking the view of the second home. And the guy was so pissed off about this tree, this beautiful tree, that he went in to try to chop it down, except in the process of chopping it down, the tree actually fell on his own house. And this is what I think is going to be happening here with this move that not just the Chinese, the Americans have made a very, I think, strategic move to strengthen the dollar. And it's causing all kinds of dollar shortages out there. You've talked about this. I don't know if we did in too many podcasts about the swap lines are just going insane, where we're just trying to provide dollar liquidity for central banks that are kind of caught goofy-footed in terms of their assets and their need for cash against the assets that they have on their books. And so the Chinese have always wanted to poke us in the eye, because they view themselves as the ascendant, entity. The Russians obviously want to poke us in the eye because we're sanctioning them. And then there's always good old Iran. Now, what we're seeing here in the last couple months is a concerted effort by the Chinese to use China runs a surplus in everything except for food and energy, Phil. And so they can't do anything with food because, we're the largest supplier of food in the world, and we could certainly wreak havoc on any country that's trying to undermine us by doing a food for yuan program. But oil's a different category because the Biden administration has been not interested in America, ramping up production per se and being the marginal producer. So the Chinese are saying, hey, look, I'll buy your oil, but I'm not going to pay you dollars. I'm going to pay you yuan. Now that works just to the point where your transaction is bilateral. And you have some charts here. We can throw them up while we're talking. Is that China will buy the Saudi oil in yuan, but the Saudis are only going to buy so much from the Chinese, based on their need for giving the yuan back to China. And that goes for Russia, it goes for Iraq, goes for Iran. The utilities limit it. And then you're starting to hear this thing from the guy from Kenya. Everybody's trying to get out of this dollar straitjacket that they're in. So there's this notion out there now that's saying, well, we're just going to get rid of all of the dollars. All of the treasuries and push it back to the U.S. government and cause their economy to collapse. Except that there's one tiny small problem with that, Phil. We're only going to give these people dollars back.
Yeah.
And which makes the dollar go higher.
Right.
And so they're stuck in a situation here where two events are happening at one time. And we're not going to bore you with it here on this, but I want you guys to go ahead and look up Exter's pyramid. This is the roll down of the value of certain assets until you get all the way back down to really gold, and I'll do gold/Bitcoin, the two non-bank liability assets out there in the world, right? You got gold and you got Bitcoin. Above that, you got the reserve currency, which is the US dollar. Above that, you got the US Treasury. and above that the stock market. So we're now at the point where stock market's wobbling. So as people cascade out of these other assets, they're going to crowd into the assets at the bottom of the pool. And so it's going to create an environment where if they sell off the US Treasuries, they're going to end up getting more dollars. So it's going to make the dollar stronger. And it's an economic phenomenon called the Veblen phenomenon. Everybody heard of a Giffen good, which means it's a low value item that goes up as demand goes up as price goes up. Well, Veblen is a economic theory that says a luxury item or an item of value will go up in price as it goes up in price and demand. And so the dollar is going to be one of those things. You know, if you have dollar debt and you have a dollar shortage, as dollars go up, you have an increasing desire, in fact, probably an anxious desire to get more dollars to satisfy that debt. And if the debt goes away, it causes even greater shortage of the dollars. So we're at a position here, Phil, where I think the dollar is probably in a situation where, as everybody's expecting the dollar to collapse, the dollar is actually going to rise in value as we go into these recessions, as we go into basically a vomiting of all other assets. They're going to keep crowding more and more into Bitcoin, gold, and the US dollar as this thing unravels. And I know you have some charts in that, but I'm going to throw this back over to you. If let me know if you agree with that, disagree with that, feeling the same way. And then I think you want to show people the chart of the dollar, and then we'll finish up, talk implications of what assets in the world that you want to own with a rising dollar. So I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, so I will speak to the technicals of the dollar chart, and then we'll kick it back over to you. But basically, dollar had a big run up, and that's where we got our lows last year in the market because, whether you guys know it or not, the dollar usually has an inverse relationship with the stock market. And in the past, I think the central bank has liked when the world was dealing with a dollar that wasn't super expensive. It helped with world trade and things of that nature. Different world now, though. We've got different geopolitical tensions. And if you want to have trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in debt, then there's no better way to carry that debt than to force other people into adopting your currency. And so what I think, what Bob's saying is, I think we're going to be entering a period of another dollar strengthening cycle. And so this chart basically is, you see this first wave up. We've had a pretty aggressive pullback, let's say, but we've pulled back into the halfway mark of this move. And a lot of times, especially when you're dealing with weekly timeframes, and that's what this chart is, the weekly time frame, when you get a 50% to 61.8%, these are just fib numbers, but the big market algos like these areas. And so we're looking for this actually put some support in, potentially a higher low here. If we zoom in, this could actually hold. And then especially if we start poking a new high over the dollar index here, we could very quickly start pushing back up. And the Fed's not going to care at this point because, like we said, we're in a different world now. So they're going to be okay with a strengthening dollar, especially when they're trying to, when we're dealing with China trying to, go around the backside as far as settling transactions outside of the dollar. But this is also going to push the markets down, and the Fed wants asset prices down domestically. So it's going to kill two birds with one stone, I believe. So I think if this does play out, don't be surprised if the dollar pushes up to, 120, 121 on the dollar index, and we see new lows in the stock market as well, all the while strengthening the dollar for the rest of the world and forcing weaker currencies, weaker countries to peg back to the dollar more and more. So I think this is a good setup. And if you're trading Forex or things like that, this would be like a long-term swing play to get long dollar, dollar denominated pairs. So anything USD, like USD Swiss, USD Yen, any of those pairs would be, a great long entry as this starts to swing back up for many weeks, actually going into the rest of the year, I think. So that's the technical analysis of it. That's where I think the strategy is as far as the Fed is concerned as well. So look for a stronger dollar, I think, into the end of 2023 into 2024.
Yeah, and people will say, okay, that's great, guys. So besides these Forex pairs that Phil talked about, well, how do you position for that? Well, number one is Phil's right. The dollar and the stock market have fairly high correlation, inverse correlation to each other. So it's going to put pressure on the stock market. And people will say, well, what about energy? Will it fall with the dollar? Well, it all depends on what the treasuries do. So if we start getting a pullback in the treasury markets, meaning higher yields, lower prices, ironically, that'll help energy and help oil. And as the dollar strengthens, we're going to be actually out there in the market buying back these cheaper bonds. You guys heard Trump talk about a long time ago. He just said, he goes, hey, I'll just go ahead and use dollars and buy back my debt because I can. And I think we're in a situation where you're going to see the same thing. It's kind of ironic. If you sell the treasuries, we're only going to give them dollars back, and the stronger dollar is going to allow us to buy even more bonds back. So we're in a situation where we really can't lose in that situation. China can't hurt us. Nobody can really hurt us by dumping their bonds on us, because all they're going to do is, instead of forcing the dollar down, they're just going to create dollars for us to buy the stuff back on the cheap, and then they don't know what to do with the dollars, so they're going to have to repatriate those dollars back to us anyway. And so people talk about, well, dollar goes up, will gold go down? Well, you get to a point where gold goes down until it doesn't, and people don't realize 25% of the time the gold rises with the dollar. And it's these situations where you go into a recession or tightening credit where the gold and the dollar will move together.
Yep.
So I think we're in that situation where we'll start seeing what I would call precious metals and precious currency are going to rise together. So that's my viewpoint on it. And for those who think it's going to collapse the dollar, is that we're the one-eyed king in the land of the blind. The Chinese are not nearly strong enough to be able to do what their fantasies want them to do. And for those here in America that want a falling dollar, be careful what you wish for, because it would end your standard of living as you know it. But that's not going to happen in the short term.
Yeah, no, totally agree, Bob. All right, well, that's going to do it for this podcast. Let us know your thoughts. Do you think dollar's going to go up, go down? Do you think, what's your views on what's going on with China and these other countries trying to deal outside of the dollar? We'd love to hear your opinions on it. Otherwise, we will see you on tomorrow's video. Thanks again for all the likes and the views. We really appreciate it. If you can hit that notification bell and set it to all, that would be very helpful. And we will see you on the next video. Take care, guys.
Trade Genius.